Welcome, everyone. I'm Karen Lehman. I am the program manager here at the Center for Schools and Communities in the Youth Development Division, and been lending support to the SIPSL initiative here at the center, which stands for the Center for the Promotion of Social and Emotional Learning. So happy to have you all here. We designed a webinar series for this spring that started last month and will end in June, our final webinar in June. And Mike, you can, go ahead and advance. I wanted to make sure that everyone here knows about the SEL for PA. For lack of a better word, I guess consortium or group. It's not an exclusive group. Anyone is welcome to attend our meetings. They are held monthly for just an hour, and there's one next week on March 20. They run from 10 to 11, and I can add the link to the chat later, but you can register to attend. And there's a group conversation. It's primarily focused on SEL in Pennsylvania and where we are and where we want to be, and sort of the movement of SEL for PA. This chapter is one of 50 because the SEL for US has chapters, I believe, in almost every state. So we're happy to be participating with SEL for PA. So you're welcome to attend. Low stakes sort of meeting. It's a friendly group and informative. We're sharing best practices across the state at this point, and we'll be forming some committees and working together to further the movement of SEL in Pennsylvania. The next webinar for this series is in April, and that's with Colleen Patterson. She's talking about co-regulation and connection, so we're invited to that one. And then I believe we're mentioning the June one with Dr. Ross Whiting. He's one of the co-leads for SEL for PA, and we'll be talking more about advancing policy initiatives around this topic. The SEL for PA will also have a relaunch at the national conference, which will be taking place in May. And so if you would like to register for that conference, it's now open and available for registration. It will be held at the Alloy, I think a Hilton property in King of Prussia, May 21 through 23. And I know that's hard timing for end of school year, but you are welcome to attend. It's a half day, full day, and half day, the end of May. Today's presentation is on motivating youth and building skills for life. And the presenter is Stephanie Colvin-Roy. I will introduce her in just a moment. I would like to introduce today's presenter. Stephanie has spent over 18 years providing professional development in prevention education and youth development. She provides professional learning, consultation, and technical assistance to schools and youth serving agencies with a focus on SEL as the Training and Organizational Development Associate for the Center for the Promotion of Social and Emotional Learning. That is quite a title. She's a colleague here at the Center for Schools and Communities. Stephanie is the lead international trainer and manages the I Can Problem Solve and Raising a Thinking Child programs. So I'm just delighted to have Steph here today. She brings a wealth of experience to us, and I will now turn the microphone over to Stephanie.
Thank you, Karen, and welcome, everyone. The way I like to do presentations is somewhat informal. So if you have questions, please feel free to put those in chat, and don't wait for me to have a pause in the action. On my end, I didn't update Zoom. So because of that, I lost a feature that I previously had. Thank you to those people who told me who you were in the chat. I appreciate that. It looks like we have a nice mix of people. Throughout the presentation today, there will be many opportunities to open up your mic and also do some personal reflection. But I would invite you, when the opportunity arises, you'll have opportunities to put things in chat, and also open up your mics and respond that way. It looks like we have about 26, 27 people. So that will allow us to be able to do that without much of a problem. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today is just a little bit of background, just in case this topic is new for anyone. We'll talk a little bit about what social and emotional learning is, and I'll provide the definition from CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And again, we'll move through these rather quickly, but I do think it's always good to frame our conversation in what we're going to be talking about today. So by definition, and again, this comes from CASEL, social emotional learning is the process through which people apply knowledge, skills, and attitudes so that they can develop a healthy identity, self-regulate, feel and show empathy, and establish and maintain supportive relationships. And the bulk of what we're going to talk about today really is this relationship piece. Our background for social and emotional learning is intended to be across multiple areas in an individual's life. The idea behind social emotional learning is something that I'm pretty passionate about. It's about teaching the what. It's moving from that to teaching how. So instead of just sort of talking at young people, we're actually empowering them to be critical thinkers, problem solvers. It also involves the relationship and the environment. And as I mentioned before, there are context in lots of different systems. So in this case, today, it's out of school time, it's in school, it's within the community, within our families and neighborhoods. And it also involves an internal motivation. So sort of stimulating an individual's desire to learn these skills for their own benefit, and also to make their relationships with others more positive. And research has proven that it does have a trickle down or spread out effect toward academic success. So the first thing that we're going to look at is building relationships. And on the next slide, you'll see the definition that comes from CASEL. This is the ability to establish and maintain healthy and supportive relationships. And I wanted to just sort of highlight, it's not just establish, but it's also maintain. I think, sometimes we forget this isn't just sort of a thing where we dabble in it, but it actually is something that then has sustainability. And also to negotiate those relationships in different settings with different people. And then on our next slide, we'll just break it down a little bit more. Relationship skills in particular are crucial for our school or educational reform efforts. It does affect both behavioral and academic outcomes, helping young people to perceive each other and more wise people, older wise people as well, to perceive each other more positively. It impacts discipline in a positive way and fosters a positive educational environment. In order to build positive relationships, it's important that we're moving toward, or rather that we're entering into this with intentionality. So we're not just sort of picking and choosing random things to do with young people, but we're really thinking about how will this benefit them, not only in the present moment, but how will it carry on into their future. The supportive climate involves including all voices, all students, seeing youth as assets, which we'll dig into a little bit more, making a personal commitment to social and emotional learning, which means teaching those skills explicitly. We are intentionally being allies and raising the bar for the young people that we work with, and also that it includes a reflection and evaluation piece. In terms of social connection, even for our high flyers, those young people that seem to be to keep on keeping on no matter what, often in their personal lives they may become more isolated. So by increasing social connections, our goal would be to reduce isolation, to provide lots of different opportunities to share not only our successes, but also some challenges that we might face. And social connections are grounded in mutual respect and trust, which we all know takes a bit of time. And then before we move into sort of the meat of what we're going to be talking about today, I did want to just show you how this connects with the Search Institute's developmental framework. Building relationships is only one piece of their developmental framework, but it involves things like sharing or expressing care for individuals, challenging growth, which is kind of like that raising the bar and having high expectations on the previous slide, giving support, sharing power, and expanding possibilities for young people. Today, we're going to be talking about CASEL's. They've identified 3 signature practices that define social emotional learning, and they involve practical things that you can begin to incorporate right away. So the first one is a welcoming inclusion activity. And you'll see this slide again as I introduce different topics. But the first thing that we're going to do together is what would be a welcoming and inclusive activity. These are meant to be quick. They're meant to connect people to the work of the day. Sometimes they look very relevant to what we're going to be doing throughout our time with young people. And sometimes they are more a way to sort of get everybody up and familiar with one another. The idea is to connect people and to build community. So the first activity that we're going to do, I'm going to explain the activity to you, and then I'm actually going to have you put a word into chat, and then I'm going to pick from the word that you put in. We're going to do that 3 times. This game is called Shiritori. I discovered this when everything went remote because I was trying to look for things to engage young people. So Shiritori is a Japanese game. It can be played online or in person, for generating random words to form creative connections and develop unique ideas. So this type of thing can be used really effectively as a precursor to having kids brainstorm. What we do is we think of random words, and after we come up with our first random word, then we're going to come up with a second word that begins with the last letter of the previous word. So this will make more sense in just a minute. But what I'd like you to do now is just put any random word you can think of into the chat, and I will select from one of those. Okay, we've got some words coming in now. Very quickly. I've got yogurt, book, table, sun, bubble. We're going with bubble. Thank you, Cody. So the first word is bubble. So for a second random word, I'd like you to select a word that begins with the letter E, the last letter in bubble, and go. We've got elephant, electric, example, evil, everything, echo. Let's go with elephant. So now we need a third word beginning with the last letter of elephant. So beginning with the letter T, and go. Tea, time, tired. Very good. Tree. And the word will be tea. Now, how are these 3 words related? Your 3 words are bubble, elephant, and tea. Can anybody think? And any answer is a valid answer. So throwing anything at all out there. Bubble, elephant, and tea. How might these words be related? And you can put it in chat or you can open up your mic. Elephants love bubble tea. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. We have drinking bubble tea while discussing the elephant in the room. That's great. What else we got? Elephants, whoops, it's going too fast for me. Elephants can blow bubbles in a big bucket of tea. Very nice. Elephant blows bubble in the tea. They are all items. So we have something that's very, so what's happening now, I think in the chat, is we've got sort of your concrete and we've got that sort of, out there and anything goes. There are bubbles in my elephant tea. There is actually a brand of elephant tea. Bubbly elephants drink tea. Very nice. Okay, thank you for your inspirational tea and bubble blowing elephants. So I mentioned earlier why this game can be fun and can have sort of another purpose, and that is really introducing to young people this idea of brainstorming. Is we take every idea, and when somebody says something like, where was the one that I just absolutely loved? Where was it? Drinking bubble tea while discussing the elephant in the room. When somebody comes up with comments like that, with ideas like that, it basically sends the message to the rest of the group that we really truly are expecting anything and everything with this. And that's then how we might generate ideas that we wouldn't otherwise have thought of. I will tell you, I had done this presentation virtually and then a similar one in person about 2 weeks ago. And there was a woman in the room who tried this with her students in an out of school time setting. The young people loved it, a variety of different ages, and they absolutely loved it. And now they want to do it all the time. So just a simple little thing that doesn't take up much time, and the kids really enjoy it. Any comments from the group about other things that this activity may help with, may sort of tie in with other things that you might be doing in terms of working with kids? Any other thoughts on this one? And do be ready, because I'm going to ask you throughout the presentation. Okay, we have a comment from Samantha. Thank you. I can see teens in our cyber school liking it too. Yes, absolutely. That's really what appealed to me about this one, is that it's very fun to do in person, but it's also something that can be done online. And it's, pretty low stakes for young people to participate. So thank you for that. And do feel free to put whatever, any other comments that you think of in the chat. And Michael will move on to the vagus nerve. I'm mentioning the vagus nerve for a very specific reason. This is something I just started adding not too long ago, because I think we lose sight sometimes of, when we're building relationships with young people, when we're integrating these ideas, the welcoming activities, engaging activities, optimistic closing activities, sometimes we forget that it's supposed to be, or it should be, fun. Maybe not a laugh riot every day, but something that is meant to engage, and fun is part of that engagement. So I did want to talk about the vagus nerve, because there are lots of things that we can incorporate that will stimulate our vagus nerve. Does anyone know the purpose of the vagus nerve? What it does for us? I like to give you a hint. I like to think of it as our secret weapon in fighting stress. Any ideas on this one? So the vagus nerve runs down the back, sort of at the base of the skull and backwards. And when you, and downwards. And when you stimulate the vagus nerve, it helps to regulate our central nervous system. So it helps to bring people back to a state of homeostasis. And it can be activated through things like intentional breathing. So we've all heard a lot about mindfulness and the benefits of mindfulness practice. One of the benefits is directly related to being able to calm that central nervous system down. So by taking an inhale and then a longer exhale, doing that 3, 4, 5 times helps to bring our central nervous system back down into a state of homeostasis. Other things that activate the vagus nerve are singing, laughter, yodeling. So any opportunity that we can get people laughing, engaged in breathing to help self-regulate, it serves an additional purpose, and that is stimulating that vagus nerve. So we literally have this secret weapon for fighting stress. The next thing that we're going to look at is I just want to sort of we'll talk, all the activities really are designed to engage student voice, but I want to sort of highlight it because it really truly is one of the most effective things that we can do in order to have young people feel engaged, want to come back to our programs, and how to increase positive relationships. From an educational setting, student voice refers to values, opinions, beliefs, perspectives, cultural backgrounds of our individual students, as well as groups of students in the educational setting, and to instructional approaches and techniques that are based on students making choices, talking about their interests, being able to pursue them, their passions, and their ambitions. So why might we engage youth by asking for their perspectives, beliefs, and ideas? What are your thoughts on why this is important? Mr. Jenkins, I love your comment about the vagus nerve. I always wondered why singing in the car makes me feel so good. Yes, so we would engage young people so that we're showing them that they're valued. Because of the population that we're serving, we can't just assume their preferences. Very, very true. Letting them know that they have a voice. And that letting them know that they have a voice is part of explicit teaching. We don't just all of a sudden invite them to share their feelings, but we intentionally talk about why there are going to be opportunities for them to share their beliefs and their thoughts and their ideas. And by being intentional with it, then I think it really helps them to, as Mr. Jenkins is saying, to help them recognize how important they are. Lex is saying because they're the population we're serving. Oh, yes, I read that one before. We can't just assume their preferences. Excellent. And Michael, if you could click one more time. How do we benefit from engaging youth voice? What is it that we get out of it? Well, I'm waiting for you. Yeah, people are putting something in, but I do want to say something about this one. One of the things that I think, and Rebecca, you're kind of speaking to what I was just going to say, this fresh perspective. Honestly, I think I've learned more by letting them, share their thoughts, their feelings, their ideas. I have learned so much as I was working with young people. I think I thought it was my job to be the one who knows, to be the one with all the information. And sometimes I simply don't have it. And even if I do have it, their perspective on things have probably taught me more than anything else that I've done with young people. Karen saying it keeps us in touch with their reality. Absolutely. Christine, oops, I just lost your comment here. Christine is saying inclusion, feeling connected and valued, checking with ourselves, recognizing when we're wrong and when we need to grow and learn. Absolutely. Helps us to learn more about them and what they're feeling. Excellent comments. Thank you for that. So let's take a look at another welcoming and inclusion activity. And again, these are designed to sort of get people ready for the day, help to build connection, to be able to see each other and also share points of view. So this activity may be familiar for some of you. It's called Rose, Bud, Thorn. And this is one that during COVID, I started to see a lot. And we have done it virtually and we've done it in person. Michael, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So with Rose, Bud, Thorn, and what I will tell you is with a welcoming and inclusion activity, you're not going to have time most of the time for kids to share a rose, a bud, and a thorn. So often what I'll do with young people is I'll have them pick. A rose is something positive that has happened, and I usually put that in the short term. So something that's happened during the day, something that happened the day before. A bud is what will happen soon that people are looking forward to. And a thorn is what hasn't gone well today. This particular activity can be done in groups. It can be done as a sort of a large check-in activity when they first come in. If you have a young person who, they've got a thorn every day, then maybe raise the bar for them and encourage them to think of a bud or a rose to share with the group. Although I have to tell you that there are some kids that just really like to be able to talk about what hasn't gone well. And I think there is value in them being able to give voice to those things. This particular activity is another one. One of the reasons that I like that it's a welcoming activity or an icebreaker type of activity is that you can connect it to learning other things that you're doing with young people. So using this concept of what is something positive that has happened, Bud, what is something that you're looking forward to, or perhaps you could do differently, and a thorn, what didn't go well. How might you use this activity with things like group work, academics, community activities? How might this rosebud thorn be adapted for that purpose? Any thoughts on that? And this is a lot to put in chat, so I will invite you to open up your mic if you have an idea of how you might use this and tie it to what young people are learning, what they're actually doing with in your programs. Yes, so Lex is saying an experiment designed for STEAM activities. Absolutely. Lex, are you able to unmute that you could tell us a little bit more about your idea?
Oh yeah, sure. So I didn't even drop in the chat either, but I'm an academic specialist at South Hills Interfaith Movement, and so I work with specifically 6th to 12th grade in after school time. That includes like a homework help period and like group mentoring time also. And so sometimes when we do STEAM activities, like recently we just did the famous egg drop challenge, and we had done Rosebud Thorn before we started the challenge, and it kind of just plays in that idea of being able to reflect and think on how the experiment went and be like, this is something that went well, this is something that I would do differently if I had another chance, and then this is something I could use looking forward. So that's kind of the idea of thinking.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, one of the other presentations, there was a gentleman who was working at the CTC in culinary arts, and he actually used this process for that in a very similar way. And as you mentioned, do the rosebud thorn first so that they get an idea of how this goes and then connect it to their learning. And the beauty of that is that they can see that often things that we're doing within engaging activities or welcoming activities do have a direct relationship to other things so that they can apply this type of concept to other things. Excellent. And on the next slide is just a question for you all. What other types of welcoming activities have you tried? What types of sort of short activities are you doing maybe at the beginning when the young people first come to you in the program or each day as they get started? Anything that you're doing out there? Let me zoom down to the comments here. Providing tutoring. A rose could be something academic that they love to do. Bud could be something that they're looking forward to learning. And a thorn could be a challenge that they're currently working on overcoming. Thank you, Lauren. Excellent example. Excellent example. And as we move forward, anything that you want to share about things that you're doing, because not only is this great, and I will take things from you, but also that we can share one another. Samantha does the would you rather question. Absolutely always a hit, always a hit. In terms of a welcome, and they will, you don't, most of the time after you've done it with young people, it doesn't even need much guidance. They will come up with, that type of activity. Lex also says at the beginning of our year, each of the mentoring groups create their own group agreement full of things they expect from each other and adults during their time with us. A wonderful, wonderful idea to put that on the young people to come up with the group agreements. You tend to get a lot more buy-in from them if they're the ones creating it, and also making that document live and breathe. So if things happen during your time with them, you can sort of switch gears and maybe pull those agreements out again and make changes. So the next thing that we're going to look at is an engaging strategy. All of these welcoming, inclusion, optimistic closure, and engaging strategies are designed by CASEL to incorporate the 5 social and emotional learning competencies, which are, those 5 social and emotional learning competencies are self-management or self-regulation, self-awareness, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And ideally, many of them are embedded, if not all of them, into our different signature practices. Excuse me. So an engaging strategy, they are methods to guide and facilitate the learning process, while also being responsible not only to our social and emotional needs, but also to our neurological and biological needs for all learners. And they really should provide a balance between interactive experiences and reflective experiences. I think we've kind of gotten carried away with group work all the time, and it's important to remember to value those one-on-one activities as well, or opportunity for sort of quiet time and self-reflection. And then certainly you can invite young people to share those thoughts. So we're going to practice an engaging strategy. This is an example of something that I have done with young people a lot. I would put up a quote at the beginning of our time together. Sometimes the quote was something that we would actually spend some time on. Sometimes it would just sort of be a brief thing that we would do. I'd have it displayed, and honestly, sometimes I didn't even address the quote. And as I was working with young people, I started to wonder if I should continue doing it. Like, were they even looking at it if we weren't doing something with it? And so with one group in particular, I actually stopped putting the quote up. And a young girl came up to me and said, "Where's the quote?" And I said, "Well, we don't always use it. And I didn't really think that, that you all were really interested in it." And here this young person had written down every single quote that I put up since the beginning of our time together, because it was like for her, many of these quotes were meaningful and sort of, I guess, almost like, I don't know, I do this. I have, there's certain things that I sort of have up in my office to kind of bolster my, my feelings or sort of keep me going. So anyway, my point in all this is that often these quotes can actually be nice touchstones for the young people that you work with. So what I'd like you to do is take a look at the quote that's on the slide. And if there's someone who'd be willing to read the quote by Tina Fey, that would be wonderful. Excuse me. Lex, I'm going to pick on you if you don't mind. Would you mind reading the quote for us?
And, in fact, I was wondering if having gone on mute was going to make me an easy target for that. And you know what? I will accept.
Sorry.
Nope, it's totally fine. I was in the back of my head. It's kind of like when the kid avoids eye contact in the room and you're like, oh, that's the one. Okay, so you can't be that kid standing at the top of the water slide, overthinking it. You have to go down the chute.
Excellent. Thank you. So when you listen to this quote, does anything resonate for you? How do you connect this to something that you may have experienced, if at all? Any thoughts on that? What does this particular prompt mean to you?
I can make a comment.
Thank you, Lise.
Okay. So I actually can think about this both ways of an experience that I had with one of the students, or in this case, one of the staff that I oversee, because I don't see students, I oversee staff. And in a personal level, sometimes when you're training other staff members, they don't usually express their opinion because they are afraid of what others will think about their thoughts or their ideas. So I just try to make sure to encourage all the staff that I oversee that there is no wrong answer. It's just wrong timing because you're not daring yourself to just speak up, and ensuring that they are being heard and valued as an employee. So I take it on that way.
Yeah, that's a great example. And what happens with quotes like this is you will hear different perspectives. Everyone sort of has, if they have a connection to the quote, often it looks very different from the next person. And so by doing engaging strategies like these, we really get to know more about, who sees things very differently than me, who might see things in a similar way, that type of thing. What we're going to look at next is, I actually did this activity. It was for a grad class, and so I had to do it, but it turned out very well because it was something I wanted to then incorporate into this work. So what you're going to see on the next slide is a mixed group of people who have received the same quote, and I simply asked them, what does this mean for you? Sorry about that. What was beautiful about the young people who shared their thoughts on this is that one of the young people in particular, you really heard her fear about a situation like this, about sort of overthinking some things. And so I apologize that I can't show that to you, but I don't know what's happening with Zoom has yet again changed some things around, so I apologize. So what I did then with that activity, and they gave their response to the prompt, is then I took it a little bit further. So we talked about addressing challenges. So because a lot of them saw them as, things that there are sometimes things that you have to do, and then when you do them, you often feel really strongly or really positively about them. So one of the things that I did a lot with young people was we worked with goal setting. So starting with a quote like the one by Tina Fey, then we would sort of unpack it a little bit more. And so the first question that I would ask them is, what might get in the way of achieving your goals? And then Michael, if you hit hit enter, the next question will come up. And then if things get in the way of achieving goals, then what can be done to persevere? So the idea behind this second question is that very often when we're doing goal setting, we neglect to talk about the what ifs. And so having a plan for the what ifs, if something gets in the way, what are some things that you can do to move past those. This can be really, really helpful and for young people so that they don't sort of get stuck and have some ideas, and they talk about these things with each other, which is always beneficial because then they learn from each other. On the next slide, a couple questions for you. When we think about engaging strategies, are there any that you have tried? And if so, were certain competencies enhanced? The one that I tried with the students, with the quote and then talking about goal setting, that particular, I think what was happening in that activity is certainly we're developing relationship skills because they're getting to know one another better and hear different perspectives. There also is a piece of it that's self-management. What am I going to share with others? How am I going to share that with others? And certainly a self-awareness piece. So let's just take the first question. Are there engaging strategies that you've tried that have been particularly successful? And if so, what are they? If you'd be willing to share those with us. And Lex, actually, I'm going to pick on you again for this one, but I'm not going to make you speak, I promise. But I want to go back to what you said about the group agreements, because while that really could be an opening activity and certainly something that you do with young people, the way that you're doing it really is more of an engaging strategy, because they're really putting forward their ideas, sharing their ideas with others, setting expectations, not only for themselves, but also for the adults that are spending their time with them, working with them. Have you tried any other, has anyone tried any other engaging strategies that have been particularly or successful with young people? And keep in mind, these are ways to facilitate learning, being responsive to not only social emotional needs, but biological needs, neurological needs, and a balance of interactive and reflective. Anything that you've done that you'd like to lift up with that? So Karen's saying photography as a way to engage, images provided to the group, giving them time to take images, use those images to introduce themselves, or finding an image from their photo gallery to share. Excellent activity. Karen, I particularly like the idea of them finding one from their gallery to share. That's actually not one I've done with young people before, but I think they'd really enjoy that. Why is it that they chose that? And certainly a great way to get to know one another. Lise, yes, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I didn't want to interrupt. Sorry.
No, please.
One of the things that I love to do ever since I was a teacher, and I'm bringing it to share with my staff on this, is that I had an activity where the students would create their own world by creating a book. So they create a big book, and I provide them with all the materials just for them to express themselves. And I'm actually going to do that with Remake Learning. So in one of my events. Yeah, so it's going to be amazing. And it gives them a chance to express themselves, how they feel, how they see themselves. And I think they usually don't get that opportunity when they're in the classroom, but creating their own story in their own way, however they feel, I think is a great strategy that I have used in the past that I'm bringing in now with the new staff that I oversee and the families. So just wanted to share
Excellent. That. Yeah. Oh, that's great. It's wonderful. And honestly, as you were talking, and I think this is the way with a lot of engaging strategies, very often they are in fact engaging. I mean, they're named that for a reason. And what happens sometimes is you may think you have an activity that you're going to do, on a Wednesday afternoon, and it's dynamic and the kids really get into it. And all of a sudden you've got 3 days worth of activities just from one engaging strategy because of the way they go, where they go with it. And Lise, the example that you gave, I can only imagine. I mean, this could become a unit in terms of, and so many different ways to connect it to all different things in their life so that they can start making connections, as well as getting perspectives from others. Excellent example. Would anyone else like to open up and share an engaging activity that they're particularly proud of that's worked really well for them? All right, and we will move on to the last of our signature practices, which is an optimistic closure. The optimistic closure activity highlights what individuals and what the group has shared, their sort of what their understanding of the work that you've done together is. It also increases our desire to return for more learning and connection. I think when we can begin our time with people, with young people, or even adults, and end in a meaningful, intentionally connection type of way, it absolutely leaves people with the feeling of this was pretty okay. And maybe I had some reservations going into it, but I could come back and do this again. So that's really the idea. Sometimes it may directly relate to what you've done with the students in terms of an engaging activity. And sometimes it is really just kind of done to say, great meeting with all of you. Look forward to you coming back and sharing their enthusiasm for what you've done together. So the way that we will optimistically close our session today is with the following. So as we wrap up today, as an out-of-school time educator, whether you're working with adults or working directly with young people, what is one of your strongest assets? What is it that you bring to this work? We've talked a lot about, using, having young people contribute their voice, their choice, their values, and seeing them as assets. What is it that you bring to this work? I think for me, one of the strongest assets is not always filling the silence. So with young people, I have really, really learned to get comfortable with the silence, because that is when magic happens. I think for some young people, it's about sort of the pressure of filling the silence, and for others, it's permission to think and then respond. Lise, yes.
Yes, one of the things that I do, not only with students, with families, because we have a lot of parental involvement activities, but with staff as well, is encourage them to accept who they are and always have the courage to express themselves in the way they are. I try not to answer too much because I usually talk a lot and I'm trying not to interrupt too many. But that's who I am. And I tell them I'm a big weirdo and I accept it, I embrace it. And you just gotta be who you are. And once you accept who you are, then everything will fall into place because that's what it was meant to be. So that's why I always finish my meetings, my trainings with something positive that they can take away and they can adapt. So just wanted to share that.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for that. Lauren says, oops, no, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Yeah, Charlene said that is big, being who you are. And at least by modeling it, I think when we're able to do this and we're able to model this for young people, then it does help them. I mean, we have to walk the walk, right? I mean, we have to be who we are genuinely if we're going to expect young people to do it, because boy, if we're not genuine, they can ferret that out really quickly and we lose all our credibility if we're not who we are, or if we're inconsistent. Thank you for that. And on the next slide, one of my favorite people, Fred Rogers, and I think this quote does a nice job of summing up what really it is we're trying to do. As human beings, our job in life is to help people realize how rare and valuable each one of us really is. That each of us has something that no one else has or ever will have, something inside that is unique to all time. It's our job to encourage each other to discover that uniqueness and to provide ways of developing its expression. Fred Rogers. And on the final slide, I do want to thank you very much. I also want to thank you for your patience with the technical difficulties. It's one of these things that I keep thinking we're going to outgrow and move past, and then technology has a different way. It has a different idea. So I do thank you for your grace in allowing that to happen, and really wonderful hearing from all of you today. As you see on the slide, my contact information is there. Happy to answer questions and share resources, and certainly would love to hear from you too if you have research or resources that you'd like to share as well. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. And thank you to Michael and Karen who were helping with the presentation. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Stephanie, and thanks to everyone here who, all of you, whatever you do in involving youth in our education system, I appreciate all that you do, and families as well, right? Thank you. Thanks, Stephanie. I'll drop the link in one more time if you didn't see it earlier, the evaluation, and please take time to fill that out before we close.